Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa usalli wa usallim ala Sayyid al-Awwaleen wal Akhirin. Nabiyyana Muhammadan wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us again to have another session where we can reflect upon His eternal book, the glorious word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And alhamdulillah, we have understood that the greatest miracle that came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is actually this Qur'an itself. Greater than producing water and food for people, curing, greater than angels shielding him with clouds. So many miraculous things happened to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But they do not equal the book, this revelation that came over a 23-year period. And so we have been looking at different aspects of the miraculous nature of the Qur'an itself. And we recognize that one of the greatest parts of this miraculous nature is in the meanings itself. It's in the language, and it's in the flexibility of the language. And it's the use of the terminologies. And there is another part of the miraculous nature of the Qur'an, which really is something special for those who believe, for those who actually look at the book, not just as a text, a reference source, or as a means of debate, but they are actually looking for guidance from the book. So there is another form of i'jaz, miraculous nature in the Book of Allah. And so we have been looking at different terms, the usages of different aspects of our life. And we found out in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 257, that Allah told us, Allahu waliyyu alladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur walladhina kafaru أولياؤهم الطاغوت يخرجونهم من النور إلى الظلمات أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. In this verse it says Allah is the guardian or protector of those who believe. He brings them out of darkness into light. And those who disbelieve, their guardians are the evil ones. They bring them out of light into all kinds of darkness. These are destined for the fire, and there they shall abide. And so we recognize in the divine usage of dhulumat nur that there is darkness and light. And one of the striking points that stood out in our last discussion is that when nur is being used, it is singular. But when darkness, dhulumat, is being used, it is always plural. It is never singular. And the singular of dhulumat is dhulma. But it's never used anywhere in the Qur'an. And the great scholars have shown us that there is one path, there is one light, one straight path, but there are many forms of darkness. And so that's intentionally done. And again, that's something that a believer believing in one God will see it in it. It's another point. It's another guide toward the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the concepts of darkness and light, and we want to reflect upon these concepts. Since we entered into the concepts of darkness, and there's a lot to do with the darkness, alhamdulillah, there's also a lot to do with the light. And actually the light and the discussions around the light are actually the deepest, we could say one of the deepest parts in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the essence of this discussion on the light is in the chapter of the light, Surah An-Nur, and this is verse number 35. And this particular verse, it is probably the most commented on verse in the whole book. even though Ayatul Kursi is the climax, it is the greatest part of the Qur'an, but in terms of the complexity that comes inside of this verse, there is really no other verse that has been commented on more than this. Some scholars say over 100 treatises, 100 papers and books have been written on this verse alone. And this is the verse of the light. And tonight we want to crack the surface of this verse, if we can try to understand it. It is so deep that even when you're trying to understand it, you can get confused. But we want to try to crack to the surface and look at some of the discussions concerning light itself. Again, this is the flexibility of the Qur'an. It is concise, but is also extremely flexible. It is taking you from present things to distant things. It is giving you examples. And this is what you call a similitude, a simile. And a simile is when you're making an example of something, you say something, you want to make the point. He's as strong as the rock of Gibraltar. Right? And so you make this simile where people will think about the rock. And now when you say that, you didn't say he's a very strong man. You say, no, he's sleeping like a log. Now when you say something like that, you can think of a log laying there. And so this is how it's used in all languages. But the divine use of similitude in this language has gone beyond any understanding, exact understanding that anybody has. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in His glorious book, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Allahu nur as-samawati wal ard, mathalu nurihi kamishkatin fiha misbah, al-misbahu fi zujaja, az-zujajatu ka'annahu kawkabun durri, يوقد من شجرة مباركة زيتونة لا شرقية ولا غربية يكاد زيتها يضيء ولو لم تمسسه نار نور على نور يهدي الله لنوره من يشاء وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. This is the verse of the light. And Allah tells us, and again there are so many translations even in the words you might use in English. It's saying Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The similitude of His light is a niche in which there is a lamp. The lamp is in a glass crystal. The glass crystal is like a glistening star kindled from the oil of a blessed olive tree, neither of the east nor of the west, whose oil would almost glow though no fire has touched it. Light upon light. Allah guides to His light whom He wills, and Allah sets forth parables for human beings, and Allah knows all things. So this is a deep verse. Every single sect of Islam, Shia, Sunni, Sufi, whatever it is, everybody has used this as an understanding, a platform for their understanding. And we, of course, coming out of the position of Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah, want to give you the basic positions of Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah concerning this verse. Again, trying to understand what is actually in it. And if we go slow, look at it slow and start to think about it, where it is saying that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Okay, so you get an image of light and earth. The example or the similitude is like a niche. Okay, we'll understand what a niche is in the wall. Okay, in it there is a lamp. Now the lamp could be like a candle or a fire, right? But they generally say misbah, they generally say it like the word lamp, although we're using lamp in a lot of different ways today because of electricity, right? But in those days, it's sort of like a candle, right, or like a flame, and it's inside of a crystal, inside of glass, right? And the crystal itself is brilliant. So you got a light that's inside of a crystal that's glistening. See the image now that it's given? The crystal is glistening, and it is being fed, that light is being fed with oil, because generally in the past it's like oil lights, right? We have electricity today. But oil, it's being fed by oil which came from a blessed oil tree or olive tree. A blessed olive tree. Now look at the imagery now, right? Try to have it in your mind before we break it down. The niche, the crystal glistening, inside is a light. It is being fueled from a blessed olive tree. It's being fueled from this blessed tree, right? And the oil which is coming into it is so powerful that the oil itself can light up without even putting a match to it. So look at power you're dealing with now, right? The glistening light oil which in itself has power. And then it says light upon light. Okay? Light upon light. Right? So this is how it is. So this is what we have to unpack. We have to unpack this, right? To try to understand it. Number one, Allahu nur as-samawati wal ard. Scholars take, Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah take three positions concerning this. We're saying Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Okay? And we use light in language, right? That's a light, which is blazing in my eyes, right? There's light of the sun. There's different types of light. But this says now, Allah, how do you decide it? Number one is that the scholars felt that it means that Allah is the guide, or He gives guidance to the heavens and the earth. So the light is like His guidance. He's giving light and guidance. He's making everything go. So by making everything work in the heavens and the earth, it includes the light. But He's the guide in everything in the heavens and the earth. The second is that Allah is munawwir, which is the one who brings nur. It's like literally, physically bringing light. Munawwir. Right? So that's literally somebody came in a dark room with a candle, right? With a lamp, as they used to carry it. He lit up the room, right? Now they turn on their cell phone and push light, and they lit the room up with the cell phone. So that person is munawwir. So in this case, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The third is that Allah Himself is nur. That Allah is the nur, is the light of the heavens and the earth in a way which is befitting to Him. And we leave it there because we're not going to know what it is. So it's almost like Allah is the energy of the heavens and the earth. I mean, even energy is not a good word to use. But just to give an idea, it's like the nur, everything running. But then they stop and they say, we're not going to give details. That's the way some people approach tafsir. And they wrote treatises about this. And here is some calligraphy that even the calligraphists who did, this is this Allahu nur as-samawati wal ard. That's a beautiful piece of calligraphy, probably in a plate type of thing that you could put on your wall. People have done so much with this verse, whether it's reading it beautiful, whether it's understanding it, making calligraphy, so much has come out of it. So these are the three basic positions. Now, if we look at the position number one, so Allah is the source of guidance, right? Allah is the one guiding everything, and He's putting light in things. And Allah even calls the Qur'an light. And you see in chapter 4, verse 174, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ نُورًا مُبِينًا. It said, and we sent down to you a manifest light. So in this case, it's speaking about the Qur'an itself. So the Qur'an is called light. Right? The Prophet ﷺ is also called light. And in a famous set of two verses in Surah Al-Ahzab, the end of it says, وَدَاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا. Right? It's describing the Prophet. At the end of these verses, it says that he is calling to Allah by His permission, and He is Sirajan Munira. He is a bright, manifest light. Because Siraj is another way of saying light. Okay? And the third point, which we started with, يُخْرِجُهُم مِّنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. Allah takes them from darkness into light. So it is Allah guiding, He's the source of guidance into the light. You see? So this is a position in trying to understand right at the beginning of this. We didn't even go into the parable yet. This is the title for the similitude, to try to understand this, what it actually means. And so the second point was physical light, right? So in this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the sun and the moon, right? And obviously there's no light apart from what Allah has blessed us with. So Allah created the sun and the moon, and when the Qur'an talks about the sun, it says diya. It said that the sun is like emitting type of light. And that the moon is nur, and the moon reflects the light. So this is how the descriptions come. So the sun is sort of a producer of light in the universe, but the moon is really reflecting the light from the sun. And that's how the Qur'an talks about it, right? So this is all dealing with light. And really, light is a serious thing. Because if there's no light, we can't function. If there's no light, all the creatures, the living creatures cannot function. And you even have some creatures in deep sea, deep down, they produce their own light. They have some chemical way of producing light, right? So they can function. And light also, if we look at it as a type of like energy, right? It's also giving energy to things that's in the universe. Okay, so this was the second position of the three. Okay? Remember the three positions, right? The guide, bringer physical light, and Himself, the light. Okay? This is the third one. This is a position of some scholars concerning mutashabihat. And these are words and verses which are unclear. They say that, we take it by face value. That Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, and Allah knows what it actually means. We have different forms of light and things that we understand, but we're not going to try to fully translate this term nur or light. We're not going to try to completely say what it actually is. Some of the people who claim to have mystical knowledge, they'll go into this. And they'll start to delve into it and try to say what it is. But they have been rejected by many scholars because they don't really have any way of proving what they are saying. So Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Now, remember the different things. One is the niche. Okay, so this on the left side, this is a modern day niche. And houses are now becoming more flat and square and space saving. But the niche did a lot of things in houses before, and some classical houses will still have a niche. I remember I went to the city of Harar. This is in Ethiopia. And Harar was the capital of Islam for many years in East Africa. And over 1,000 years ago, the Hararis were probably had the highest level of civilization, in the area of Somalia, Ethiopia, East Africa, these Hararis had. And I went into one of their houses. It's a beautiful wooden house. And they had niches all throughout it. And this is way back, they're using the niche. They used the niche to put their porcelain, their utensils, all their different things. So literally how we have drawers and whatnot, they used the niche to put things, right? The niche can also be used for light, because you see how the light is in that niche. So if that was just on a flat wall, it would not have that way of, it's how it spreads out, right? So the niches can actually affect the light in your room itself, how the niche is made. And generally it's in an arch type form, how the niches were made in the past. On the right side is the misbah, which is the lamp or the crystal. Just there's so many different levels of this. But again, that misbah has got to be inside of the niche, right? So this is the concept which is being drawn for us.
It's also called mihrab in some old days.
The mihrab is another way of saying it. But but this one here, and I'll show you, I have later on a classical one that I put in the, see on the left? That's the classical one. That's the niche, the lamp, and inside is a flame. But the flame is not bright. But this, I took a picture in Oman, in Muscat. This is a real Arab house, the classical Arab culture. Probably in Pakistan too, Afghanistan, and North Africa you'd find in the classical Islamic houses. In Turkey you'd find this type of thing. So now the misbah itself, it is in, you have the niche, and fiha zujaja. So zujaja is generally used to mean glass. But some translations, they say crystal, because crystal is even a better way of saying it. It's like a form of glass, but crystal's got a shiny nature to it. But it's this glass, the way it's described is that in the niche, there is the glass, but the glass itself is like a bright shining star. Okay? And the word that is used here, when it talks about, see the second point, the glass protects the light, and here it is a brilliant kawkab. So the word is known kawkab, and a kawkab is a brilliant star. Okay? It's a brilliant star, something like this. That's kawkab. You can say najm. Najm is a star too. That's the general word. But if you say kawkab, you mean glistening and bright. You see how the Qur'an is so expressive, right? This is now similitude, which is given to us. And when it talks about the kawkab durri, when it says also that it is, it is bright, durri generally means overwhelming. It's an overwhelming light. So this is an overwhelming light coming out, right? Which is surrounding the flame, right? And the fuel is coming from shajaratan mubarakah, one of the blessed olive trees. And this is one of the ancient olive trees, and this is in Palestine. And Palestine is where you get some of the most beautiful trees, olive trees in the world, really, really old, ancient trees. I travel to Spain every year on an educational tour. We're going this year from April 1st to the 7th. And as southern Spain is packed with olive trees. Like literally you see thousands of olive trees. And when we go out and visit some of the villages, then you can see some of the old olive trees. And an old olive tree has got like character, even in how it's winding up and the shapes it takes. And so it is a blessed tree that is giving this thing. Okay? So again, these are descriptions now coming in of that. All right? So another thing is that Mubarak itself said Shajaratan Mubarak, right? So Mubarak also means that it produces a lot. a lot of good and a lot. So, so they say, because that's how it's used in Arabic. So they say this thing has got barakah. It doesn't necessarily mean spiritual blessing. It means that it produces a lot. That's how they'll use it, right? It does a lot of good. It can produce a lot. So mubarak. This is shajaratun mubarakah. But what is interesting is that the Qur'an said, la sharqiyya wa la gharbiyya. So this thing is being fed. This tree is not getting its power from the east or the west. It gets it from both. Right? So this is a deep description. So you got the tree, and they say that there are some trees in Palestine that somehow they get the sun when it rises, and at nighttime, they're able to get light and keep going. But this is like unlimited power. So the source, the power which is feeding the light inside of the brilliant star, inside of the niche, that oil is unlimited oil, unlimited energy that is coming into this. Okay, and again, it said zaytuna. So when you say zaytuna, zayt in Arabic is the word for oil. And zaytuna, of course, is olive oil. So you say, go to Arabic, I want zayt zaytuna. I want Arab oil. I want olive oil. Okay, and some sayings the Arabs would say, unless you have olive oil, you don't have oil. It's really, and most Arab plates, dinners, if you sit down to the dinner, they will have olive oil or olives, on the table. They have to have that. Okay, it's part of a culture that goes back thousands of years. So this makes it even more expressive to the Arabs who it came down to, right? So when they receive this is another way, when they see a verse like this, they say like, no, this is not from this man here. Like, we know this man. He's Al-Amin. He's a good person, but he's not a poet. He's not any real scholar of us that we know. But this image here, this is an amazing image. This is an unbelievable image that we have to try to unpack. Okay? Any questions up until now about this? As we go on, we can go on. But this is like physical, on the physical parts of this.
With respect to the lightning, I forgot the ayah in the Qur'an where Allah subhanahu talks about the lightning as, would that be part of the physical light also?
Okay, so this is the thing now. Sometimes when you see the word light being used, there is a physical part to the light, but there's another dimension to this, and that is the spiritual dimension. That's the spiritual dimension. And Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, and many of the great scholars, Ibn al-Qayyim and many scholars, his position is that really the strongest interpretation of these images is not physical, it's spiritual. So the interpretation saying Allah gives light to everything. So in other words, Allah has unlimited light. So now Allah has allowed us to light our cities. The sun is there, the moon is there. No, it's not just that. He said that the light refers to the light of Iman that Allah places in the heart of a believer. That's what it really is. So the light is now this spark of faith. It's like something from Allah. It's like it says with the ruh, that the ruh is something from Allah that the angels carry and they breathe it into the baby. Right? And Iman, the faith, is also something put into a person. And every child, the Prophet ﷺ has said, is that every child is born on the fitrah. Kullu mawludun yulad ala al-fitrah. So every child has the spark of Iman in it. And the Prophet ﷺ said that it is the parents that will change that child into a Christian, a Jew, or a fire worshipper. But the spark of Iman is in every child. Right? And that was Ibn Abbas's position. Now, Shaykh Ibn al-Qayyim, also has extensive tafsir, which is a very interesting one as well. And so now he broke down the spiritual side. Let's look at the spiritual, let's unpack the spiritual side. Okay? Remember the niche, right? He said the niche is the chest of the believer. Your chest. Okay? And the glass lamp, which is inside the niche, is your heart. Okay? And the misbah, the light or the candle, this is the light of faith. Okay, that's the flame, would be the light of faith. And the light of faith comes from the Qur'an itself. That oil which is coming into it, that is from the Qur'an itself. Right? Which is, an unlimited oil. La sharqiyya wa la gharbiyya. It's not east or west. It's an unlimited power coming from the Book of Allah. Okay? This is how he broke it down to try to understand it. Now, we have to look at it from a spiritual sense. And really, the spiritual sense is the most powerful aspect. This is what Allah is getting across to us. But he used the similitude, of the niche, and the glass and the light, so we could try to understand this. But even in showing us the niche and showing us the glass, he did it in a way that keeps your mind out in space. Because remember, the glass is this kawkab, durri, it's this bright star. And the flame is being lit, with this pure oil coming from the Book of Allah. Again, there's a lot of explanations of this, right? But this is one way to understand what is going on in this thing. Okay, so this is sort of how it looks. That's the physical side. And the other side is like your niche is sort of like your rib cage or your chest, sadr. It's your chest, which inside of it is a rib cage. And then you can see the heart, which is inside of that. Okay? And but inside that heart, which is supposed to be the glass, inside that is the light. Now, what is deep about this, when you look at this, is that number one, the glass lamp, zujaja, this crystal, this is the heart. And the heart itself, we understand, is not just the physical heart. And we have been, it's used, and there's some connection with the spirituality in your heart. And it is said now that before, the scientists used to believe that a human being was basically a brain and then different limbs. The brain is like your hard drive. It's sending signals to the rest of your body. And the heart just pumps based on the brain. Now is a new understanding, is that the heart itself, that the majority of decisions of the people are not made in the brain, but it's made in the heart. And the heart is connected to the brain. There's a connection. Because the heart is giving you emotional decisions. This gives you intellectual things. 1 and 1 is 2. But the emotional part, it's coming from your heart. Okay? So even physically, there's a connection between the heart, and the brain. And we use it in language. They say, he's got struck with heartache. She broke his heart. That means she took her axe and clamp and broke it? No. It meant she hurt his feelings, right? She broke his heart. So even in English, even people not even in our realm use this terminology like that, in a more metaphysical sense, right? The Prophet ﷺ, on one occasion, he said, shoulder to shoulder, come close together, so your hearts will not be divided. Now, why would he say your hearts are going to be divided if you're not shoulder to shoulder? Is that physical? No. You see? Also, one time a person came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked about bir, asked about righteousness, and he said, istafti qalbak. He said, ask your heart. You already answered him? Ask your heart. That's not just a physical organ pumping blood. It's something like your conscience. It's your conscience. They say it's the door to the soul. Right? This is your heart. And there are different forms of hearts. There are some heart which is, and the one that's talking about here, is this crystal. Right? It is a brilliant thing. But also the glass and the crystal, it protects the fire. And that's why they had that. You have your light, your glass over the fire. Even now with your light bulb, you surround the filter, whatnot, with glass. It's protecting it. Right? So your heart is protecting, this power. It's protecting it. Okay? And so there are some hearts which are very strong, but at the same time is delicate. It is delicate. But it's strong, right? So in other words, it can be very strong, even with a light bulb, certain way you push down on it, it might not break, but hit it another way, breaks right apart. So it's like its strength and its high quality. There are other hearts which are like stones, hard-hearted. That's what they'll say. So their stones are like hearts. Their hearts are like stones. And, there's the Prophet ﷺ in one occasion, he said, hearts are Allah's vessels on earth, and most beloved unto him are the finest, firmest, and clearest of them. Right? This is a hadith in Tirmidhi. He said, your hearts are the vessels of Allah on earth. In other words, that conscience that we have, right? That part of us, which is the door to the soul, it is the vessels, right, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. And Allah loves the fine, firm, and very clear heart. But the one which is rocky and hard-hearted is no good. And in one verse, this is chapter 3, Ali Imran, verse 159, it said, if you were hard-hearted, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ غَلِيظًا, if you were hard, if you were cold-blooded and hard of heart, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, right? Hardness. Ghilz is like roughness. Then the verse says, they would have left you, O Muhammad. If you were like that, hard-hearted and rough-hearted, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, they would have left you a long time ago. Right? But your heart is clear, it's soft, but it's firm. Right? And then there are other types of hearts which are weak hearts. And a weak heart is one which is easy to break, and it follows anything which is put in its way. If it's given some ideas or some thoughts or direction, it goes that way. If it gives some other ideas, it goes that way. And you can see that amongst people. There are some people who will follow any trend that comes out. They tell you to wear your hair long. They tell you to wear it short. They tell you to wear wide pants, short pants. They tell you to put a little tail on your head, like a little dog, right? And they put tails. Whatever the style said, they follow it, right? Weak-hearted, instead of having that strength inside of the heart. And this is an important concept in dealing with, the heart itself. But within the heart itself, we understand that there is the light of faith. Okay? And every human being has a light. So that light is in every human being. That person who is in the Amazon River, they have some parts of the Amazon River up until now where they have no contact with people. No contact with so-called civilization. They live deep in the interior of the Amazon. And when the planes go by or anything, they shoot arrows at it. right? And they're in a so-called primitive state, but they've found when they met some of the tribes in the Amazon that some of them actually believe in one God. And they have civil society, they have hierarchy, they have structure, order, they bury their dead, whatever, but they've never heard of Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Donald Trump, nobody. Okay? But and the scholars say these people are on the fitrah. We cannot say, the Christian missionaries would say, these people are going to hell unless they accept the blood of Christ. We don't say that. Our scholars say that those who the message have not come to properly, they are under the mercy of Allah. Allah can forgive them or punish them. So that person on the Nile, if that person believed in the Great Spirit, they lived a good life and died like that, they will be judged by Allah. And that person could be forgiven and enter paradise. Because they never heard of any of the books. Now, how could that person be a Muslim and be accepted and he didn't read the book? This is a deep point. The Christians would say, he's going to hell. He's just going to hell. We say no, because we say that that person had a light inside of them. You see it? The light is already there. Okay? Coming from the fitrah of the child that is being born. And what happens is that when the light of the Iman, of the Qur'an, remember the fuel and the faith, right? Coming from the fuel of the Qur'an, when that reaches that person and they respond to it, then it becomes nurun ala nur. You see it? It becomes light upon light. That's your light upon light. Because the light of the believer is in that naturally, and then it's coming from the outside, right? And it's nurun ala nur. This is a comment here. I took some comments from different scholars. One of it says the heart of the believer is so illumined that he could almost know Allah solely by the way of his own God-given fitrah and his own intelligence, though he had no fuel. Okay? Then the fuel of revelation reaches him, gives glad tidings to his heart, mixes with his own radiance. You see it? The light of revelation is added to the light of his own God-given nature, and the two combine to become light upon light. Nurun ala nur. You see it? Nurun ala nur. And this is the deep point. Now, remember, there are some people, and it is a position. Remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also called the Prophet Sirajan Munira. He's light. So they might interpret that the Prophet coming to the people, right, is nur ala nur. Okay? But the clear, strongest position, is light upon light. You can see it in the individual, having it naturally in the fitrah, right? And then the light coming, light on light. Okay? So this is it. When the light of the Qur'an reaches the purity of the heart, it becomes light on light. Look at that calligraphy over there. This is a masterpiece. I don't know who actually did it. I don't know calligraphy styles to know. I know the Turks are good at calligraphy. Iranians are also very good at calligraphy. Yeah, you see in the middle, that's Nur. The black, the noon, it doesn't point up. The noon is sort of go down. But you see the black dot above the end? So it's Nur, Noon, Waw, Ra. Nur. And then you can see in different places, it's saying here, Allah, Nur. See, Allah, 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 Allah. All these things is like Allah, right?
It's the Nur ala Nur.
Yeah, Nurun ala Nur. So this is calligraphy for Nurun ala Nur. Okay? It's a masterpiece, man. But remember, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. He's in the center, right? But then Nurun ala Nur. So it's the light upon the light. And that is, the beauty of this verse. That is the essence that's the highlight of the earth, of this particular verse. Another interesting thought we can say is that, Arabs call vision nur. Right? So spiritual vision is put inside of us, right? And it has incredible potential that cannot be limited to this world. So in other words, there is spiritual light in us, and when the other light comes, then it now emanates. So that person becomes an example of the light for other people. So when the natural believers in one God got the message of the Qur'an, right, the guidance from Allah, then they become a light for everybody else. And that's the reason why, or one of the reasons, you can see Islam spreading so rapidly. Within 100 years, the Muslims had reached all the way to China, way up to Russia, down the east coast of Africa, all the way across Morocco to the ocean. Within 100 years, with a few numbers. Because it's like light. People were like sensing this thing about them, and I want to be like you. So people were embracing Islam. So again, Nuran ala Nur, it's what can come out of a person who has that light. Okay? Another reflection. Allah is saying the light will come from within you. We are going to be the source of light. We internalize it so much so we can use it during dark times. After all, the lamp is only beneficial when things are dark. Right? Its beauty shines during dark times. Our faith is only good when it shines during difficult times. So in other words, when daytime comes, you turn off your lights. You don't keep your lights on in the house when the sun is outside. Right? So it's no longer of value to you. But when the sun goes down and it's dark, now that light is essential, right? Its light is essential. And so this is where, this is the reflection that this light that Allah put in us, and then the Qur'an, right, is the more we strengthen it, right? And the real test of your light is in difficult times. You lost somebody, things happen in your life, there's serious problems happening, the world seems dark with oppression, right? It's that light coming from within out, right? That's the light that will preserve us in the darkness. So you can take this in a lot of ways. It's a beautiful concept if we understand that spirituality, and that light coming within us. What we will do at the end of our course, by the way, for those who want, is that we will share the PowerPoint with you. Right? So at the end, anybody who wants it will contact the brothers here. Just bring a flash drive, or we can try to send it to you, and you can get the whole PowerPoint, right, for the course. It's sort of like the notes. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You'll get it at the end because it grows. So once you're at the end, then you can get the whole of the course on the flash drive, right? So in other words, you don't have to write everything here, right? I'm going to give it to you. These are going to be your notes, but it's not on a paper. I'm going to give it to you from the flash drive. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, in this concept of light, has made dua. It's a long dua, but when it starts off, it's saying, Allahumma aj'al fi qalbi nuran, wa fi lisani nuran, wa fi sam'i nuran, wa fi basari nuran, wa min fawqi nuran, wa min tahti nuran, wa an yamini nuran, wa an shimali nuran, ila. So he said, so you can see nur is being used, right? So he said, "O Allah, place light in my heart, and on my tongue, light, and in my ears, light, and in my sight, light, and above me, light, and below me, light, and to my right, light, and to my left, light, and before me, light, and behind me, light. Place in my soul, light. Magnify for me the light. Amplify for me light. Make for me light and make me a light." Look at this dua. Make me a light. O Allah, grant me light and place light in my nerves and in my body, light in my blood, light in my hair, and light and in my skin, light. This is found in Bukhari. So this is one of the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ. You can see the use of light, how he's using that. It's amazing how the light is being used. And so the light is, a type of, in a sense, spiritual energy. It's a type of spiritual guidance and energy and power coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, the whole of the heavens and the earth. But the light can also come to other people as well. It can come to us. Okay? And another tradition is that Abu Dhar, radiallahu anhu, he said, I asked the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Have you seen your Lord?" And he said, "There is light." How could I see him? This light which prevented him from seeing, preventing him, this light which prevented him from seeing him is a veil of light, and which is further explained in the hadith of Abu Musa, who said the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood up and told us 5 things. Allah does not sleep and is not befitting that he should sleep. He lowers the scale and lifts it. The deeds in the night are taken up to him before the deeds of the day. And the deeds of the day before the deeds of the night. His veil is light. Hijabuhu nur. That's what the Arabic is. Hijabuhu nur. If he were to withdraw the hijab, the splendors of his countenance would consume his creation as far as his sight reaches. And this is deep, because when you say she's wearing hijab, it's not a little scarf, right? The scarf is khimar in Arabic. A hijab is like a protection, right? It's a body language. There's a lot dealing with hijab, the concept of hijab, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also has a hijab, right? And the Prophet ﷺ now, when he went on Isra and Mi'raj, so he went to Jerusalem, remember, and then went above the 7 heavens, they said, did you see Allah? And he said, it was only light. He was surrounded by light. So hijabuhu was nur. Right? So it was there, this energy, this power. Right? When the Prophet ﷺ went that far up, it was surrounded by light. And by the mercy of Allah, we can't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Musa asked for this. Musa alayhi salam asked to see Allah. He talked to Allah. And something of Allah's majesty came, and the mountains crumbled and Musa fell in prostration. That's it. Right? You're not going to be able to see this. Okay? So the light is a deep, deep concept. Okay? And Ibn al-Qayyim said, on the day of judgment, however, the light will come forth by their faith and hasten before them in the darkness of the bridge, that they might cross it. Now there is between the mawqif, between the place where people are judged, and between paradise, there is a sirat. Everybody has to cross the sirat. And it is very thin, and below the sirat is Jahannam. And a strong believer passed through twinkling of an eye. Right? And based on your faith, right, it is the speed that you're going to go across. Hypocrite is going to go a little bit and then stop. He might even start going back, just like he did in this world, right? Practice Islam one day and something else another day. You see? But the believer goes forth, and also the light that you will have crossing it, right, is based upon faith as well. And he said, rahimahullah, they will proceed in proportion to either its strength or its weakness in their hearts during their life in this world. For one person, it will be like the sun. For another, like the moon, the stars, or a lamp. For yet another, this light will be only at the tips of his toes. It will shine, then go out. For just as his light had been in this world, so he shall be given when crossing the bridge, the sirat. In fact, it is the selfsame light that had appeared to him before. However, just as the hypocrite has no real light in this world, or has only an outward light, but none within, you see, so shall he be given on the day of judgment an outward light which will vanish in darkness and be lost. And there are some hypocrites that will come, shine their face with the nice coconut oil or olive oil, put on the turban and be shining to everybody. And everybody says, look at his light. But inside, he's a hypocrite. He hates Islam. He just wants power. He just wants you to kiss his hand and kiss his feet. Right? He wants submission. Right? So he's a hypocrite. That's outward light, right? But he had the outward light. If you looked at him, you would say, like, the light, it's in him. But it was really his coconut oil. Right? It's not necessarily the inward light, because the inward light is a spiritual thing. So, this is the verse of the light, Ayat an-Nur. I want to open up the floor for any questions anybody has about it so far. This is a deep chapter, which actually, if you start to go into the treatises, you can be talking about this all night. This is a deep one. And if you have any tafsir books or any scholars you read, go to this one and see what they have to say. And you'll get some more comments. This is the flexibility and, the strength of the word of Allah. Just those few verses or few words in one verse. And look at what we got out of this, man. This is i'jaz, right? That's the miraculous nature of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions anybody has on this? Floor is open for any questions concerning the verse of the light. Now, what is interesting, which is brought up by some scholars, and you'll see it, is that Surah An-Nur, the chapter of the light, starts with Azani wa Zaniya. It starts with an adulterer and adulteress, that you should punish them, right? And all the way through it, it's ahkam, it's rules. And all your thing about even women's thing, wearing hijab, our relationship with each other, it's setting limits and everything like that, right? But right in the center of it is this. So what it's really saying is that these are only laws. But if you don't have the light, then you don't really have it. You got to have rules, right? You got to have limits, because we're human beings and we have an animal side. So you have to have limits. But the essence of this, all that you see, is the light, right? It's to bring out your light, and it is to gain the light.
Sorry,
Yeah.
does this mean whatever good, whatever rules we follow or whatever good deed we do, but if we don't have our inner light, so does this mean this one?
Right. So what it means is that the rules themselves are not enough. You see, what has happened even in the last few years is that because Islam was so crushed, Muslims were so crushed our educational systems taken away, our knowledge taken away. And in the past 50 years or so, there's been like a burst of knowledge now. It's come back. We have access to it. So what many Muslims, in their enthusiasm, they just started reading the rules. So they're saying, you got to make your salat like this. You got to wear your clothes like this. You got to do this, you got to do that. So they were just rules. But they didn't have the spirituality. You get it? So they became like the Pharisees in the time of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. The Jewish Pharisees were all about money, gold and silver, money. Jesus brought the spirit that they had lost. And this is one of our problems we have today, is that many people will quote Qur'an, Hadith, and all this other stuff. But, he's a rude and arrogant person, man. So what's the value of all of this if you are an arrogant person? If you treat people in a bad way, you see? So this is right in the center of one of the most important chapters of rules. It's this chapter, a lot of rules. But in the center of it is the verse of the light, right? Which is one of the most spiritual imageries in the whole Qur'an, is this one, right? It's the imagery that comes out of it. See? So this is how some people look at this. To give you an example of some of the deep philosophical scholars, Al-Razi, Fakhruddin al-Razi, who was very much into like real imagery. For some people he goes a little bit too far sometimes. But Razi said, based on his understanding, he said, the people of the earth look to the skies and they see the lights of the stars. But the people or the creatures in the heavens, the angels, they look down on earth and they see the light coming out of the hearts of the believers. So just like we're seeing stars up there, they're looking down on earth and seeing the believers, the lights of the believers that are there. And it's not a physical light, it's a spiritual light. You see? And that is the reason why when the Prophet ﷺ came to Medina, what we say, the city called Yathrib, we now say Al-Madinatul Munawwara, right? Munawwara. So it is the lighted city. It's called Yathrib. But look at, it's not because it had lights. There's no electricity, right? But it was lighted with Iman, right? The taqwa, so it became lighted city. So this is how we use the concept of the light. Okay, so this is the verse of the light. An assignment for you is to look it up. If you have any tafsir books or anything, look up some concepts. And even next week, if anybody comes with some other ideas, you can present it to the class. There's been over 100 treatises written about this by big scholars. Different ways of looking at it. Okay? What I've given you is the skeleton, the base. So now, when you read something about it, you can follow it. Because most people will get confused. You just read it and say, okay, it's a light and, it's got this oil and it's not east, it's not west, it's, what is this, man? It just sounds like foolishness. But when you can break it down and understand the Arabic, you can see how deep this actually is and what it's actually teaching us. Okay? Any other general questions anybody has concerning this verse? And now, if there's any questions about Islam, any general things anybody has?
How many negative things do you think came out of the hijab cutting story of the child, as it has a really effect on the people not believing Muslims in the future?
Which story?
The child with the hijab cutting scissors stuff. Hijab cut, supposedly.
Oh, you mean the one here?
Yeah.
I don't really know.
No, do you think there's been any big negative?
Yeah, there was a lot of feedback. There was some even Islamophobes took it to attack. But it really did. The way the media is now, it's gone. It's a spin that's gone. People might try to bring it up, but it did have an impact, but not that much. But what we do recognize now, and this came up last weekend because last weekend was the anniversary of the slaughter in Quebec City, right? And what they recognize is that Islamophobia in Quebec in 2017 has doubled. The amount of attacks on people has doubled, right? The imam even there, his car was even attacked. So it's not gone away, and Muslims cannot become complacent because the Prime Minister recognized it and some other people recognized it. Cannot be complacent. You have to be on the watch, even when I'm sorry to say it, but even when you're walking in and out of this facility or any facility, anywhere you are as a Muslim, and sisters tend to be a little bit more visible, you have to watch things around you, right? Alhamdulillah, we're in Canada, we're not in Cleveland, or in Detroit, right, or in Los Angeles. But don't go to sleep because we're in Canada, because the Islamophobes are here. It's just they have a different way of moving here. And alhamdulillah, we have more numbers and power, especially in the GTA, right? But we have to remain vigilant, no matter what is happening. Now, any other questions? Yes.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who wants to sort of persevere within a culture like this?
Yeah, I mean, for a person who wants to persevere here, number one, we have to understand our own faith. The more you understand the deen itself, is the better you can make decisions as to what to do. But at the same time, we cannot become blind to what is happening in society. So in other words, we have to keep up with the trends. Not involve in it necessarily, but know the languages. Just know what's happening, in other words. Some people will go 1,400 years and they're inside their book, and that's their whole world, man. And they walk outside and they don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going on, right? So in other words, it's a balance between knowing what's in the dunya, but also knowing the deen. People tended to go to extremes, either one side or the other side, but it's more of a balance, right? That we understand Islam, and at the same time, we know what's happening outside. And skills development training, gain as many skills as you can. Yeah, there's skills. Even survival training. You have to know how to survive in society. You can't, people are forgetting all basic skills of life, right? Now they want artificial intelligence to do everything, man. Right? But having those skills may become important one day if there is, a nuclear crisis or, major thing. It can happen. Right? What is our survival capability? Right? So the more skills we have and abilities we have, is the more we're able to cope with things that are coming. Right?
We are more into like a cocoon, and we only trying to, follow just the rules and guide, all the do's and don'ts. But the life of the Prophet, which was the character of which we should be emulating, we have left it far behind.
That's right. That's right. And so this is really a light that we actually have. We have a light, and we have to take advantage of it as more than we can. Okay? So inshallah, we will continue on with our understanding of I'jaz al-Qur'an. Have a safe journey home. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.